has been a very exciting time being a Drag Race fan for the last 4 months. Season 16 has given us so many memes, iconic moments, fights, shade, twists. Practically every week there's been at least one moment that the fandom spends the next week dissecting, shitposting, and giving all of their thoughts on. Now, my main complaint on season 15 in my coverage of that season is that it felt like it wasn't taking enough risks. It was playing everything so safe. And wow, did this season take a hard pivot to the opposite. We've seen eliminated Queen LaLaPaRuZas in place of a reunion, the Rey Queen twist, immunity potions. There was always something new to break down, and that made both watching and covering this season on the podcast so exciting. Especially during a time where there seems to be a bit of Drag Race fatigue, this was the season that brought everyone back and made Drag Race feel like it should. I seriously have not enjoyed a season as consistently as this one since season 12. And that seems to be a general sentiment of the fandom. This is definitely not the season to sleep on. Speaking of sleep, so I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Manta Sleep. For anyone who knows me, they know that I am a horrible sleeper. I am terrible at sleeping. It takes me up to an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours to fall asleep sometimes. And if you have trouble sleeping, then you know how frustrating it can be. It is literally the worst. But I now have a product that has helped me immensely with my sleep, and that is a mask from Manta. So for me, I'm an overheater when I sleep, so I got the Manta Cool Mask, which has these little cups in them that are velcroed in, and you take these off, you put them in the freezer, they get nice and cold, and then you pop them back into the mask. The mask is adjustable, so it will fit anybody. And this is not the only type of sleep mask that Manta makes. They have the kids mask, the steam mask, the weighted mask, the Bluetooth mask. They have a mask for every single person. So if you are someone who struggles with sleep, I can 1000% tell you that this has helped me out. And when I had the flu, I had the worst headache. I had so much sinus pressure. This helped me so much. So this is like an unexpectedly perfect timing to get this mask. So thank you for that, Manta. If you would like to get 10% off your Manta order, just use code DRAGDETECTIVE at mantasleep.com. Thank you so much, Manta, for helping me get better sleep and for sponsoring today's video. As always, we're going to go episode by episode and break down all of the placements, the twists, the production decisions behind the season. But first, we need to talk about this cast. What an iconic group of queens. Almost every single one of them came to make good TV and were not afraid to fully be themselves. The most important thing to a season, it is truly the make or break factor, is cast synergy. And this cast was absolutely perfect. All 14 were chosen by the drag gods themselves to make the most balanced, perfect cast. I literally would not swap out a single queen. Even ones like Tsunami Muse and Geneva Carr, who didn't get any huge storylines, still felt necessary to the group dynamics and worthy of being one of the 14. Going in, I do think there were a few queens who stood out as potential production darlings for one reason or another, the top 3 all being a part of that group. Sapphira Cristal is one of those next level talented and professional queens who the show loves. She's applied 11 times, which also usually means good things. Think how Nina West was highlighted for that in the narrative on season 11. And we see from the jump that RuPaul and the judges are in love with Sapphira. Nymphia Wind is truly one of a kind. I mean, a queen from Taiwan, now living in Brooklyn, who has some of the quirkiest drag I've ever seen, but at the same time, it's being so totally fashion. She had fan favorite written all over her from the first second I saw her. And then, of course, Plain Jane, a queen who truly is not going to hold anything back, is lightning in a bottle to production. So many queens are scared to get a villain edit, and rightfully so with how vicious this fandom is. So to have a queen who truly could care less and is going to go no holds barred with her thoughts and opinions is harder to come by now than it used to be. Mistress and Lux luckily filled this role last season, and it made for some of the best moments of that season. So seeing Plain Jane on this cast and her dry wit and her shadiness just in the premiere episode alone, I was immediately sold on her as a main character on the season. Some other names that stood out to me were Tsunami Muse and Dawn. Drag Race loves a queen related to a legacy queen. So many drag daughters and mothers and sisters have come in with built-in storylines just because of who they're related to. While this didn't end up coming to much fruition in Tsunami's storyline, probably because her and Candy are just such different types of people, it still immediately endeared or turned people off of her based on how they feel about Candy, who is one of the most polarizing characters of the franchise.
So I am one of the most polarizing characters in Drag Race history.
And then Dawn is just one of those quirky weirdos that the teenage girls in the fandom pee their pants over. The second I saw her, I knew she would be beloved. I kind of used my sister as like a gauge of this, as like some of her favorites are Crystal Method and Diabetti and Willow Pill. That's like her favorite type of queen on the show. And she was a massive Dawn fan. So I'll call my prediction accurate on that one. There were a few other queens who caught my eye after the Meet the Queens, namely Morphine Love Dion and Megami, but I would say the ones that I mentioned previously were the ones who really stood out to me as coming in with a slightly upper hand for one reason or another. So now that we have our cast, we can talk about the episodes and everything that went down, starting off with our double premiere, of course, being the talent show. But this time, there were two added twists, the Rate Queen and the immunity potions. I know a lot of people were a bit hesitant about the Rate Queen twist, especially before we knew how long it was going to last, but I actually really enjoyed it. I think if it had lasted any longer, I might not have felt that way, but since it only lasted 3 episodes and only one queen went home as a result of it, I thought it was fine. I love how Drag Race just keeps taking like little tidbits from other shows, this being an obvious Circle ripoff, but considering that was how the show was conceived, it makes sense to still be taking influence from other shows 16 years later. Now, as an avid Survivor and Big Brother watcher, I also play games on Discord for fuck's sake of them. I was living for when Plain Jane rigged the results in order to get herself a top 2 placement and block Nymphia. That's the exact shit I would have pulled if I was there, and I wish more queens took advantage of that. Morphine strategized her rankings a bit to try and save Tsunami, but other than that, everyone just played it completely fair. But overall, I'd be down to see this twist come back again next season, especially for the talent show, since it's a non-elimination anyways. It's truly no harm, no foul. Now, the first group of 7 queens were so much fun from the start. We were introduced to so many dynamics and relationships. Tsunami and Morphine are friends. Q and Morphine and Tsunami and Amanda immediately established this kind of fun, shady friendship, with them all reading each other for filth in kind of a harmless way, but it's really funny. It immediately endears you to them all. Sapphira comes in and immediately gives off mother energy. Dawn and Mirage are captivating from the second they walk into the room. I mean, this group is just so insanely fun and talented, and I love going back to watch this premiere in particular because it's just good vibes all around. For the first photo shoot, they have to pose on RuPaul's front porch for a Ring doorbell cam, and this is just so stupid, but it's so fun. Actually, both of these photo shoots are super fun and original and genius, and they're some of my favorites of the entire franchise. There are queens who immediately understand the assignment, like Amanda and Dawn, and then others that are a bit awkward throughout their time in the photo shoot, like Mirage and Tsunami. But Dawn especially was so funny during this segment. I was really excited to actually see what she would bring to the comedy challenges after this little bit that she does. But like low-key, this was Dawn's best comedic moment of the season, and it's honestly my favorite Dawn moment of the season. So it's sad that it happens right off the bat, but it's still iconic. I kind of wish Dawn got the win for this mini challenge just because of how much she got what the point of this challenge was. Like, Sapphira also had a lot of fun, and she posed with the house down in the shot that they chose, but we all know that they take hundreds of photos and they only show us one, so really it's just up to production on like who they want to highlight right off the bat. And I do think Sapphira is someone that they saw as a potential threat and did want to highlight early, so it makes sense that she would win this challenge. She ate, her winning, it makes sense. I'm just saying that there were other options as well. After the photo shoot, the queens are introduced to our twists and given their main challenge, which was the talent show. Now, I am so over this challenge. I've been done over this challenge, but with the MTV theming of the season, I liked it a bit more than usual. This episode was the MTV Spring Break themed talent show hosted by Derek Barry, which was so iconic seeing her back. The staging was awesome, and it definitely added to the vibe. As for the talent numbers themselves, this was a pretty strong group, but we got a lot of the same thing. Lip syncing to a song, riveting. Dawn, Morphine, Amanda, Tsunami, and Mirage all do this. Now there are some that are better than others. Mirage made the entire world fall in love with her because of how iconic her number was. I actually saw Mirage shortly after her elimination when she came to Cleveland, and listen, this queen is a next level talent. I've been to many a drag show, both Ru Girls and local drag artists, and no one I have seen has ever lit up a stage and got the room going the way Mirage did. If you get the opportunity to see her live, please take it. You will not regret it. The top two, though, it's very obvious. Q does a campy kind of ballet puppet illusion performance, and Sapphira sang opera live, but gave it a comedy edge by changing the lyrics of the song to, like, calling RuPaul daddy and, like, all of these weird things. But they were both really original, smart, campy performances, and 100% up Ru's alley for the types of performances that she gravitates towards. The queens then, because of the twist, have to rank each other 1 to 6, and this group ranks very fairly, with Tsunami and Dawn maybe being ranked higher than I would have ranked them by some, but overall it was fair. For this twist, I won't be calling any decisions made by the queens rigged, just like how I do with All Stars and who they choose to send home. I may not agree with it, but they literally get to do whatever they want. How can that be Riggory? Sapphira and Q lip sync for the win to Break My Soul by Beyonce, and when I first heard that first note, I yelped. I was so excited to have something from Renaissance on Drag Race, and Sapphira Cristal turned it the fuck out. This was the first titty bib malfunction of the season, of the first 2 episodes even, with Sapphira's breastplate splatting on the floor while she splits. It's iconic, it's disturbing, and the malfunction actually made the performance even better because she was just going with it. This also was the first introduction to Q's lip syncing, which was interesting all season long. She obviously does not keep up with Sapphira, and Sapphira is given the first win of the season along with an immunity potion, which does have an expiration date, but they're not told at this point when it will be. I know this twist didn't really pay off on this season super well, but I actually really hope they bring it back. There are like 500 immunity idols on Survivor, and maybe 1/4 of those actually lead to anything exciting. Maybe even less. But when it does get exciting, it's worth all of the ones that fizzle out. So I think it's worth giving it another shot. Plus, the Death Becomes Her theming of the potion is super fun. I love it. Overall, great first episode, and we go into the second premiere to get introduced to the 7 other queens. Just like the first episode, there are so many fun dynamics established right from the jump. Hershey and Plasma become fast friends after being the first 2 into the workroom. Plain Jane immediately reads everyone for filth and starts this frenemy relationship with Geneva that's really fun. Nymphia immediately steals the spotlight the second she enters the workroom and becomes the star of the episode along with Plain. And for their photo shoot, they are at the SheMV, which is genius. And with T.S. Madison joining Ru to host the photo shoot, it makes it even more ridiculous and fun. They start getting the girls to do all kinds of weird shit for their photos, and queens like Plasma and Megami, Nymphia, and Plain are quickly able to show that they can volley with Ru and T.S. Madison. Nymphia is the winner of the photo shoot, which again makes total sense, both because of her performance in it and just in establishing her as an early threat to the audience. And in the talent show, this is where things get interesting. We get more of the same, lip syncs to original songs or other people's songs from Geneva and Plain and Plasma and Hershey and Mhi'ya and Megami, with Plain and Plasma adding kind of different elements to make it unique, like live impressions and condiments. So at least they have that. But the real standout of these performances is Nymphia Wind, who does a traditional Taiwanese dance routine. And when the critiques come, Nymphia and Plain Jane definitely end up getting the most praise. But Geneva also gets really solid critiques. And then when it's time to rate a queen, Plain Jane is very smart and realizes that Nymphia is probably going to get rated very high by everyone and ranks her dead last so that she can potentially surpass her in the rankings. And it works. Nymphia gets bumped down to third because of Plain sabotage, and the top two ends up being Geneva and Plain. Do I agree with that top two? No way. But Plain played the game, and I cannot fault her for that. Her plan works, and she ends up winning the entire episode after a very strange lip sync to Shower by Becky G. Shower just doesn't seem like the best lip sync song, but I'm pretty sure that's Becky G's only, big song in English, so it's not like there were options here. The queens all come together in the next episode, and that introduces even more relationships and dynamics, which is great. Morphine suddenly becomes a very important queen to the narrative when she reveals that she knows both Plain and Mhi'ya, and all three queens are smart enough to play up some of the shadiness between them. Morphine and Mhi'ya's dynamic becomes one of the most essential of the entire season, while Morphine and Plain kind of goes nowhere. But I think that's because they don't know each other that well. In the first elimination challenge of the season, it is the Mother of All Balls, with the categories being Mother Goose, which is a fairy tale inspired look, Famous Mothers, looks inspired by Famous Mothers, and then Call Me Mother / Father Eleganza, which I feel like could have had a better name, but whatever. They basically have to deconstruct menswear and turn it into women's wear, which I loved as a little twist on the regular design challenge. We've seen them be given garbage or dollar store items 30 times, so something like this feels fresh and a bit harder to nail. They also are able to use fabrics from the fabric wall, as we learned from Online Tea later, and this somewhat factors in later. A lot of queens we see struggling this episode, but especially Mhi'ya and Mirage. This is an interesting misdirect, since neither of them end up in the bottom two, and the actual bottom two of Geneva and Hershey is mostly hidden from the viewer, which is fun since I'm so used to the episodes beating us over the head with who is going to be in the bottom. After all three categories, the queens rank each other, and the top three and the bottom three are then sent to be given critiques by the judges. I liked this a lot since the judges can't impact the rankings at all based on their responses and critiques to things. Do we think Plain Jane would have been ranked number one by everyone if the queens didn't hear the judges rave over her burger finger performance like she just performed open heart surgery on the stage? I don't think so personally. In the end, Nymphia, Q, and Sapphira are named the top three, while Mhi'ya, Geneva, and Hershey are named the bottom three. Again, I'm not going to say any of this is rigged because it was up to the queens, but I was low-key surprised to see Mhi'ya in the bottom. I thought the final product of her third look actually wasn't bad at all, but we'll dive more into what I would have done in the next video. Q and Dawn are both given a storyline this episode about how they're seamstresses and they're definitely each other's biggest competition. And this is highlighted a few times. It's definitely meant to seem like they're both going to end up in the top together, which doesn't happen when Dawn ends up just safe. But the true silent assassin of this episode is Nymphia, who doesn't gloat or talk much about her designing skills in the workroom, but she tells us in the confessional about how she considers herself to be a very skilled designer and sewer. Setting Nymphia up as the silent killer while Q and Dawn both end up losing the challenge, after gloating all episode long about how this is their challenge to lose, is a very satisfying and unexpected storyline. Once Nymphia came out on stage in that third look, it was kind of game over. Very clearly she was going to take it. It's seriously a top 5 design look of all time, and I don't think that is just recency bias. Now, as for the bottoms, this is the start of Mhi'ya's season-long story arc about needing to come out of her shell. Ru calls her out on the main stage about being a bit meek and shy, which Mhi'ya, very quietly disagrees with. It's not a great moment for Mhi'ya, and in my head was the start of the end of her journey, as I did not believe that she would be able to come out of her shell as much as Ru needed her to, as quickly as she did. One of the things that helped me love this season, I think, was not being spoiled. I've been spoiled for every season basically since I started watching, and I think once I started getting some Drag Race fatigue, knowing exactly what was about to happen didn't help. After being unspoiled for both UK5 and Season 16, and loving both of those seasons, I think I'm going to go unspoiled from now on. It made for moments like Plasma's elimination, and Megami's lip sync annihilation in the SmackDown, and Q getting cut last minute to be much more impactful than if I would have known about them for months prior. But the bottom two of Geneva and Hershey, I think does end up feeling very correct. I think the cast chose well here, as well as Nymphia getting the win. The only thing I would have changed would have been Mhi'ya's spot. Hershey, her first look was great. Her second look was a bit suspicious. And her third look, she was wearing pants that she didn't even make. And that's literally a cardinal sin of the show. And I'm gagged that she had the audacity to do it, but it's low-key iconic. And then Geneva just didn't have any look really be a success. There were fit issues and odd styling choices in every single one of her looks. They lip-synced to an Ava Max song that I don't remember what it was because I don't know any Ava Max songs. And while Hershey decides to give auntie energy, which I found strange given the song that she was performing to, Geneva gives what's needed to be given, dancing and splitting all over the stage. So Hershey goes home, but she is a fantastic first boot. We got to know so much about her due to her being around for 2 episodes, such as her family, being a parent, opening up a discussion about the hate gay parents get, and we even got to learn about the YouTube roots of her drag. Her auntie style of drag is something we don't really get to see very often, and her personality was infectious. I think she for sure gets added to the list of the best first boots from Drag Race. And now we move on to the RDR Live Challenge, and we'll have more to talk about now since the Raid a Queen is over, and production becomes a part of every decision that is made. So I know this is a challenge a lot of people hate, this SNL spoof challenge, but I actually love this challenge. It's delightfully camp and stupid, and even the bad sketches are fun to watch because of just how bad they are. So I was living. But this episode is all about Plasma. We've seen her talk about being overlooked and underestimated in previous episodes, and this episode, she has a fire under her ass to do well. She fights for one of the Weekend Update host roles, but Dawn and Q and Amanda kind of block her from it and tell her that, they should do it because they're all friends and they'll have better chemistry, and she gets stuck with one of the Barbra Streisand roles, the Barbershop Quartet, which is so funny to me. Also because it's a trio, but she does not want this role because she wants to show a different side of herself to the judges, already kind of showing off her musical theater gay energy during the photo shoot and the talent show. But while she sees this as a hindrance, everyone around her is telling her it's a strength, and that she was given a role that she can nail if she puts her mind to it. Like I said, I knew no spoilers, and this edit was giving me elimination vibes. She was just being such a sourpuss and down about herself in this role that I wasn't confident that she was going to pull it together in time. But once again, the storytelling on the season kept us on our toes, and she ends up slaying the role, being the standout of her skit, and winning the entire challenge. Another major plot of this episode is about Mirage, who fights for the hosting role with Sapphira, wanting to pick a role that will take her out of her comfort zone and show the judges a new side of her. Now, while Plasma wanted the same thing and didn't get it, Mirage actually does get the hosting role, and she immediately goes into panic mode when she realizes how integral her part is. Literally almost immediately. It's girl, did you not think about this when you said you wanted the role? For most of the episode, Mirage is in her head, and unlike Plasma, who's able to pull it together in time for the challenge, Mirage is not. she actually doesn't even do, like, that bad. She's just very visibly nervous, and she pulls a Mrs. Kasha Davis welcome, which is the kiss of death on Drag Race unless your name is Sapphira Cristal, but more on that later. There's a few more storylines this episode, like Megami worried about being overshadowed by Plain Jane and their skit, Plain coming for Morphine when they're picking their roles, and the reactions to Plain coming for Amanda in Untucked, the episode prior. The Plain Jane and a mandatory meeting feud is one of my favorites in recent memory. Besides Lux and Lucy, I can't think of another feud in the last few years that was this entertaining. Unfortunately, this storyline does kind of overtake all of Amanda's screen time and kind of becomes the only thing her tenure on the show is about, but it's a nice stepping stone in Plain Jane's story arc going from one-dimensional villain into well-rounded anti-hero. And I'm starting to realize as I'm recording this that I'm losing my voice. So this is gonna get crazy. By the end of this, I might sound like Carl Weezer. Who fucking knows?
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Anyway, the top for this episode ends up being Plasma, Plain, and Q, with the bottoms being Mhi'ya, Mirage, and Geneva. Now, I remember being beyond flabbergasted that this was Geneva's journey on the show. After starting with a top 2 placement, 2 bottom 2s in a row was wild. Especially since I pegged her to be top 5 in my preseason predictions. But it was fully warranted. I mean, Geneva didn't understand who her character of Lindsey Graham was. And if you don't know who you're parroting, you're just not going to make it work. But once again, I feel like Mhi'ya did not deserve this low placement. Her critiques last episode were that she was too meek and small personality-wise, so she amped it up a lot for this challenge, being this, like, weather woman caught in the apocalypse, and I thought she was really, really good. I'm like, damn, she's really going there. Like, she could have played this so small, but she's taking a risk and making it big. But then she's put in the bottom 3 and said that she was too much, she wasn't giving levels, and I just thought that was kind of mean. Like, she followed their critiques, but they decided to be Goldilocks or some shit with the too much, too little. I was like, listen, I get her runway was not the best, but I just feel like there were other options for low over her. But luckily, Mhi'ya doesn't have to lip sync, but we do get her iconic Cher impression, which is probably the number one thing getting her a spot back on All Stars. The bottom 2 end up being Geneva and Mirage, and in my head I was like, Miss Geneva, we've seen what Mirage can do. You in danger, girl. But then...
Oh, she doesn't know the words.
My heart shattered. Mirage was definitely outdancing Geneva, but it's a lip sync, not a dance off, and Geneva was able to perform well and knew every word to Dark Lady, which was an iconic song. It's crazy. We had like the worst lip sync songs and the best lip sync songs this season. It's like we have fucking Bloody Mary and Made You Look, and then we have Dark Lady and We Got the Beat. So unfortunately, we lose Mirage in one of the most depressing eliminations of all time. She breaks down into tears before departing, and it was sad because she was sad, but even more sad because she had so much left to give, especially in the following episode, which is the girl group episode. So I truly hope we see Mirage back, because she is such a superstar and the most second famous boot of all time. While this was a great episode for Plasma, this was the beginning of the end for kind of Q's storyline. We see Q really wants to win and has worked really hard to get to where she's at, but after 3 episodes as the runner-up instead of the winner, it's visibly starting to get to her. This storyline actually lasts until the end of the season, but this is the episode where the cracks in Q start to show. So far, there hasn't been any crazy Riggory, but the next episode was called out heavily by fans for being incredibly rigged, so let's break it down. It is the girl group episode where the queens are broken into 3 groups and each given a different RuPaul song, but damn, this is so uneven because one of the groups gets frickin' ASMR Lover, while the other girls get Courage to Love and Star Baby, which are nowhere near as iconic or easy to dance to as ASMR Lover is. ASMR Lover is literally one of the best songs in Ru's entire 30-year discography. How are you about to give the other group Courage to Love? Like, I'd cry. It's no wonder that group ends up winning. Look at the material they had to work with. It'd be hard to fuck up ASMR Lover. Let's be real. Group 1 is Dawn, Morphine, Q, and Sapphira, and they're performing Star Baby. Group 2 is Amanda, Plain, Plasma, and Tsunami, and they're performing Courage to Love. And group 3 is Megami, Nymphia, Mhi'ya, and Geneva, and they are performing ASMR Lover. So the main storyline of this episode is setting up Team ASMR Lover as the underdogs. Everyone is saying that like 3/4 of them have underperformed so far or been in the bottom, and they kind of become the target of a lot of the jokes in the confessionals because of this. We also see Nymphia, the only one of the 4 with a win, is frustrated and kind of down on herself because she hates writing and they have to write their own verses. But luckily, she is on a team with Megami, who is the queen of writing verses, as she's posted tons on Twitter, and they were all iconic. Team ASMR Lover actually comes together, and with Nymphia and Mhi'ya's choreography, Megami's lyricism, and the chemistry between all of the teammates, they absolutely annihilate the challenge, delivering one of the best girl group performances in RPDR history. The other 2 groups also do well, and only one queen truly struggled this week, with Q's dancing struggles taking center stage this episode. She also looks a bit of a mess during the performance, and even with a super fun runway, that isn't enough to save her from the bottom when everyone else is firing on all cylinders. Literally so many queens do well this episode outside of the top 4. Dawn, Sapphira, Plasma, Tsunami, they're all standouts. So there's a lot of talk about how a mandatory meetings elimination this episode was fully rigged. So let's break that down. In critiques, Amanda gets red for her wig constantly being in her face during her performance, which was distracting to Michelle, as well as her runway being one of the worst of the night. Now, I appreciate this look, like I appreciate Selena's street lamp look. Like, it might not be the most fashion outfit, but it's camp and it's fun, and low-key, I don't think it deserves the hate that it gets. But the judges were definitely correct to call out her wig issues. I mean, that wig in general was a bad decision, and although it was a tiny mistake to call out, when almost the entire cast put on a perfect show, little things like that count. And then we hear them get asked who should go home and why, and there's a lot of Amanda, and there's a lot of Q. And getting picked by a lot of people in front of Ru and the judges to go home is never good. I think that, along with the fact that this wasn't the first outfit that Amanda wore that the judges disliked, was all working against her here. And like, looking at the rest of the cast, who would be in the bottom over her? There isn't a single mistake in the performances I can call out to even bring up another option. Amanda was bottom 2 here simply because she did the least great out of everyone besides Q on this cast. And that sucks, and it's not going to feel good, but sometimes that just happens. The bottom 2 of Q and Amanda lip sync to Emergency by Icona Pop, which I think we can all agree was a garbage song. We reuse songs all the time now. Just give them I love it and let's move on with our lives. This also was a point of contention for fans who said that Amanda won the lip sync and should have stayed over Q. And I just never got this. I feel like they both did as good as you could do with the song. Like, they both had their moments to stand out. Amanda maybe had a little bit more energy, but Q, I thought, had a nice build throughout her performance. I think it was close enough that track record coming into play does make sense. Like, Q had been in the top every episode prior to this one, while Amanda has been safe the entire time. It makes sense to keep Q here when the lip sync was so close. Now, Amanda, she has been on quite the journey with fans this season. She was one of the fan favorites while she was on the show, but she's kind of become a punching bag for a lot of the fans now because of her rants on Twitter. And that's become somewhat of a bigger conversation this season, with people calling out Amanda and Megami and Q for their Twitter behavior during the season. I tend to just think, like, let these girls feel their feels, get them out while they're, experiencing this journey with the world for the first time. Obviously, certain lines shouldn't be crossed, but I don't think anyone really went to the point of no return, if that makes sense. Amanda, I mean, she has a built-in storyline all ready to go for whenever she wants to return for All-Stars, so I expect to see her again very soon, but I could say that for a lot of queens on the season, like Mirage and Plasma and Plane and Megami and Q and Morphine. Like, I could see them all coming back very soon. The next episode is the second design challenge of the season, where the queens are all given dolls that they have to create looks for and market as their own drag doll, as well as create a look for themselves that complements their doll's look. Now, this part of the challenge was a little hard to understand. Like, I wasn't sure if they had to be an exact replica or not, but when the critiques came, anyone whose wasn't a replica got red for it. This was another challenge where a lot of the queens did a fantastic job. This was also a huge episode for Q, who finally gets her first win after surviving the bottom. I think that Q would have probably burst into flames if she wasn't given the win here, but luckily she had the best look of the night and one of the best design looks ever. So her winning made complete sense. We'll talk more about Q later, don't worry. While Q got her little mini redemption arc with her finally getting a win, the same cannot be said for Dawn this episode. After claiming that she was going to win the ball and only being safe, she enters this challenge with just as much confidence, and once again, does not win the challenge. Dawn was like kind of a strange competitor this season. Her iconic entrance and photo shoot made me think that she was going to be like this huge threat and like fan favorite. But when it came to the actual competition, I always felt like she was holding back somewhat. Like, she was amazing and hilarious in the confessionals and in the workroom, but she never made me laugh in the comedy challenges. She has such an easily definable brand, but I feel like she dropped the ball in the branding challenges even. Like, she was definitely liked by the fans, but I don't think that she was this massive fan favorite the way that I thought that she was going to be. Like in this episode, I went in fully expecting Dawn to win. She has one of the most easily recognizable brands on this cast and could knock this challenge out of the park. But she decides to go for this like outer space avant-garde look that like looks different than anything she's worn prior. So I was like, girl, why? Like, throw 500 accessories and some patterns on that doll and you're golden. But that is not what she did. She ends up in the top, but does not get the win. Even like Q, I don't think has a recognizable brand the same way, but her look was just so next level and made enough sense for her that it was a no-brainer that she would win over Dawn. Our other member of the top three was Plain Jane, which I'm just going to say I disagree with. I really think there was another look and branding that impressed me more, but I'll reveal that in my unrigging video. I don't know what about Plain Jane says aquatic, but for a branding challenge, why didn't she just go like full stupid campy bimbo? That was one of my issues with Plain this season. It felt like she wanted to brand herself that way, but then her drag went off in so many different directions. I don't actually believe you need to like brand every single thing that you do. That's how Nymphia got flack from fans this season with her whole banana shtick. But Plain Jane to me always felt like she wanted to be like kind of branded. Like the bimbo thing was part of her drag, but then she'd wear other things that were just like whatever she felt like in the moment. Like especially in this branding challenge, I don't think she hit the brand she was trying to sell us. So while she looked great, I feel like she only nailed half of the challenge. This episode was also a big one for Sapphira, who uses her immunity potion for like kinda no reason. A couple of the girls psych her out in the workroom as she isn't as confident with her look that she's made, and the judges also kind of give her like stone face when she's on the runway this time, and both these things scare her into using it, and immediately the judges are like, oh, shocked. Like, they didn't just stare her down for the entire runway. I completely understand Sapphira's headspace and decision here. Like, I play so many Survivor Discord orgs, and I've wasted so many immunity idols when I didn't need to, but in the moment, it's like, I'd rather waste this than regret not using it after I'm eliminated. And I'm sure that's the mindset Sapphira was in. Turns out, she never needed to use it anyways, so this truly was no harm, no foul. As for the bottoms, Mhi'ya, Plasma, and Geneva Carr were all riding the struggle bus. Plasma isn't the best seamstress and definitely was stressed out having to do another sewing challenge so close to the first one. Plain Jane using her fabric also made her final look stand out even worse, since her use of the fabric was so clearly not as good as Plain's. We also saw Mhi'ya struggling hard in the workroom with her look, but Mother Sapphira came to the rescue and at least managed to help her get something together. It still wasn't enough to save her from the bottom, but she gets this very annoying critique from Michelle, who told her that she needed to pad her doll to make it look a little bit more like her, and I just thought that was a bit unfair. Like, why not just give everyone a doll that fits their body type instead of giving everyone this like rail thin doll where queens like Megami and Mhi'ya and Geneva have to do extra work of figuring out how to pad their dolls without making everything look lumpy, like the skinny queens don't have to worry about that. It just kind of seemed like a critique that you could like keep to yourself and just like overlook. But Geneva, she struggles with proportions, and things that she chose for herself looked huge on the doll and vice versa. I just think Geneva is an incredible performer, but I think she needs to work on her fashion just a bit before coming back on All Stars. She did have a few cute outfits, like her entrance look, her reveal yourself look, but a lot of her looks just had some like strange proportions and design choices. But like, it's so easy to just like wear better clothes. Like, you can't buy talent, and she has lots of talent. So I have no doubt she will be just fine. Also, can I just say how I yelped and screamed when I heard this is a story about control when the lip sync started? I will not be satisfied until every song on Control and Rhythm Nation has been a lip sync song. And now that we're dipping our toes into the velvet rope, like, I stay winning. But we are up to the top 10, and it is time for a Rusical. This time, it is the sound of Rusic, and from the jump, this was another massive episode for Plasma. As the musical theater gay, this episode can either go two ways for her, either the Jan Sport way or the Courtney Act way. Luckily for her, it went the Courtney Act way. But she had some major competition in Sapphira Cristal. As always, there's a few roles you like really want in this Rusical, and the rest are super forgettable. Plasma and Sapphira were the top two, and they definitely had the two best roles in the Rusical, so there's no coincidence there. Q had the next best role, and she was the next one in the top, so like, no wonder these girls are literally like slicing throats to get like what roles they want in these Rusicals. I would be too. This was also potentially the best runway of the entire season with this flower runway. And the three best looks were Plasma, Sapphira, and Q. So yeah, along with their performances in the Rusical, those three annihilated this episode. There are definitely arguments to be made between Sapphira and Plasma winning, and low-key, I was shocked Sapphira didn't win. Her Mother Superior role had winner written all over it. It has the most jokes, it's the kind of humor that RuPaul loves, her runway was one of the best ever, and she hadn't had a win since the premiere. So I thought this would have been a great episode to reintroduce her as a huge threat and make everyone forget about her wasting her potion. But Plasma winning also makes total sense. She had the most time on stage, the most lines, the most dances to learn, and she was able to do it all perfectly while also adding many of her own little moments to make the role unique to her. And her runway was for sure the second best of the night. It was absolutely stunning. It fit perfectly with the theme of the episode, with it being a funny girl moment. It was everything. Plasma getting 2 wins and then going home shortly after was wild. I made a whole video about it, so go watch it if you haven't already. But low-key, her storyline was over. Like, she just wanted the recognition and the stamp of approval from RuPaul, and she got that. So while it sucked seeing her go because I was rooting for her so hard, it wasn't like a Jan storyline where it felt like there was so much unfinished business. This wasn't her season to win, but I think she's going to slay on All Stars whenever she chooses to come back. The bottom for this episode was Mhi'ya, Megami, and Morphine, which all makes sense for the most part. This was a challenge where really no one did badly. Mhi'ya had the unfortunate veil incident where her veil flies into her face and then she's kind of left like flailing for a moment to get it off. She definitely could have and should have camped that moment up. I think she could have gotten away with it if she had acted faster and tried to make Ru laugh with it. But kind of like Amanda, on such a strong cast, it takes tiny little moments like that to put you in the bottom when everyone else has like a perfect performance. As for Megami, I think part of her bottom placement was that she didn't stand out the most in this challenge, but I also don't think the judges were vibing with her super hard, and the audience also wasn't either at this point. But as of one of Megami's defense attorneys all season long on the podcast, along with Kayla, I truly don't think she had a bad episode besides the talent show, and even then, it wasn't bad, it was just a bit underwhelming. And that's kind of Megami's performance here. There was nothing wrong with it. She had some really funny moments. I do think she got outshined by some of the other queens in this cast. And with them having some issues with her runway too, it didn't shock me that she was bottom 2. Low-key, the way that people talk about Megami this season was kinda gross. But in a different way than, like, the gross way people usually talk about the queens. Like, I don't think anyone hated Megami, but she was written off from moment one and basically dismissed the entire season. Even when she was doing well in the challenges, like the doll design and the girl groups, so many people overlooked and discredited her, asking, like, why is she even here? Like, it was just a bit sad to see, and I think the talent number, along with Dawn calling her the Eeyore of drag, was kind of the 1-2 punch that kind of did her in with the fans right off the bat. And that sucks because obviously now everyone loves her and calls her underrated and mother and this and that, but like, where was that energy all season long? Does a queen need to do well on the season to deserve your respect? Does a queen need to be winning challenges and top placements left and right? Like, Megami was a punching bag on social media all season long, and all it took was one episode of Slayage for everyone to change their minds immediately. It was just bizarre. Like, I'd have people sending responses to the podcast telling Kayla and I to get over Megami. Like, why do we care about her? Like, we like her and care about her because she's a cool-ass person and does cool-ass drag. Like, do we need another reason? And I know Megami's probably gonna watch this, so hi girl. You made all of your fans so proud, and I cannot wait to see where you go from here. Oh, and come to Cleveland. Up next was Snatch Game, and this was not a great Snatch Game. There was a lot of super promising characters, like Amelia Earhart, Meghan McCain, Patti LuPone. I was excited for all of these. Even Jane Goodall, I could see being done in a funny way if it was done right. But besides Plain and Sapphira, everyone else was like varying levels of fine to cringe. There's definitely discussion about who should have won between Sapphira and Plain, especially when you bring in the runway, where Plain's was safe but clean, and Sapphira's was stunning, and the performance of it was fantastic. But I think Plain just nailed the improvisational aspect of the challenge the best. Some of Sapphira's bits felt planned, which is completely fine, but Ru always appreciates more on-the-fly comedy like Plain was giving. She was reacting to the people and the things happening around her, and every single joke landed. So while I agree there is an argument to be made that Sapphira could have won, I don't think it was rigged that the win was given to Plain. We also have a major Mhi'ya storyline this episode, as she really doesn't have much faith in herself, nor does anyone around her have much faith that she can do well in this challenge. She struggled to come out of her shell up to this point. She struggled in all of the comedy challenges prior. So there's kind of the vibe that everyone is expecting her to fail yet again. Morphine and Ru both kind of point her in the direction to act like some of her friends who are, you know, maybe bigger personalities than she is. So she decides to make up a character, Trina's cousin Shaquita, which, by channeling her friends back home, she's able to pull off a pretty solid Snatch Game and a spot in the top. And this is a huge moment for Mhi'ya. And while this doesn't lead her to, like, a full redemption arc where she slays the rest of the competition, it was a nice moment to show both herself and the audience that she does have it in her to be a threat and bring what's needed to be brought in the comedy challenges. Now, as for the bottoms, there were a lot of options. Dawn is barely shown, but kind of just plays Meghan McCain as Dawn. Tsunami makes her own character, the Gold Tooth Fairy. I mean, I guess Shea Coulee technically made this character on All-Star 7 for a runway, but Tsunami brought her to life here, kind of. But the character, I mean, it was so, like, empty, and there was nothing for her to bring. Like, if you're gonna make a character, you better know every detail about who they are, and Tsunami didn't know shit about this Tooth Fairy to bring her to life or make her funny. Morphine goes for Anna Delvey, and is definitely trying her best to be funny and interact with the other queens, but she's just not able to land many of her jokes. And then there's Nymphia, who I think was truly the worst of the bunch, and that's not a banana pun. She was so unfunny that RuPaul was getting visibly annoyed. Nymphia's storyline kind of takes a shift in this episode, whereas before, she was portrayed as like a cunning strategist who was downplaying her skills to make herself seem weaker. Now she's being portrayed as someone who's kind of unsure of herself and not confident in her skills whatsoever. And this is a narrative that continues for kind of the entire middle portion of the season. She's kind of edited to be whiny and delusional, and we see many of the other queens kind of growing more and more annoyed with her every week. That edit on top of her abysmal Snatch game really made me think she was going to be in the bottom. But after her incredible runway, she's saved and just given a low placement. But like for me, this is one of those situations where I don't think runway can save you from the bottom. Like, I see the runway as a tiebreaker. If you're neck and neck with someone for the win or for the bottom, the runway can break the tie. Nymphia was clearly the worst in this challenge, so while her runway was stunning and like next level good, I still don't think that means she can escape the bottom. I really think Morphine becomes the sacrificial lamb for a lot of these episodes in the latter part of the season. She's yet to really have like a standout episode competition-wise, and so throwing her into the bottom is kind of like a wake-up call. Whereas like Nymphia has had many successful weeks, so putting her into the bottom here would have kind of put a pin in all that momentum. But I still think her Snatch game in the edit this episode was so bad, it put a pin in her momentum regardless. We see Tsunami and Morphine in the bottom, lip-syncing to I Wanna Dance With Somebody by Whitney Houston, which is a song I'm shocked wasn't used already. It's nice to see their friendship here, but I wish we got to see more of it throughout the season. Tsunami's elimination here hit the group hard. In the workroom afterwards, everyone is devastated. More devastated than any other elimination all season. And the fact that she won Miss Congeniality, I just wish we got to see more of her relationships with the cast, so her elimination hit a bit harder, and we felt the way that the queens felt. I understand why Tsunami wasn't heavily featured in the episodes. I mean, she was safe every episode up until this one, but she seemed like the glue somewhat of this cast, and getting to see that would have been nice. At least she was able to slay the reading challenge before her exit. The next episode is the third design challenge of the season, which was wild, but something I was really excited about. This whole episode is a riff on Wednesday, the Netflix show, but like this was filmed a year ago when that was everywhere, but now the season has been over for like ages and everyone's moved on, so this kind of just felt a bit random. I think Drag Race should stop tapping into current cultural moments since like by the time it airs, we've all moved on. But the fact that this was a goth design challenge was right up my alley. I was so excited for this, but you know who wasn't excited for this? Plasma. Poor Plasma. I mean, I knew this was going to be her kryptonite. We already know she's not the best designer on the cast, and this goth challenge is like the exact opposite of her aesthetic. It's great being so branded, but on Drag Race, you have to do random shit all the time. If you're not able to expand your brand to fit different vibes that are needed from you, you're going to be in trouble like Plasma was here. Dawn gives her the advice to go outside of her like old Hollywood box, and I think in theory that is a good idea, but in a challenge where she's already going to be struggling, mama, listen to the lunchroom in High School Musical and stick to the status quo. This was not the episode for her to be taking huge risks. Like, go for the old Hollywood villain vixen and call it a day. Instead, she throws everything but the kitchen sink into her look, and it ends up looking literally insane. I do think production liked Plasma a lot. I mean, they easily could have given the Rusical win to Sapphira if they wanted to, but they gave it to Plasma for a reason. But I think this is one of those cases where there truly is nothing they can do to help a queen out in the situation they are in. Plasma was so clearly the worst in the challenge and lost the lip sync by a lot. If she survived this, the Riggory would have been way too obvious. Sometimes letting a queen they love go is the best thing, and then she can come back to All Stars with a great storyline ready to go. Another huge storyline for this episode was Mhi'ya, who also struggles majorly with design challenges, being in the bottom for the prior two. This episode really highlights Sapphira as the mother of the season. She helps Mhi'ya immensely with her look, as well as giving Plasma a much-needed hug when she could tell just how stressed out she was. Sapphira just has this calming presence, like you can just tell. I love her so much. In the end, neither Plasma or Mhi'ya are able to flip their narratives around and succeed, and are very clearly the bottom two of this episode. They have to lip sync to fucking sped up Bloody Mary, which was so cringe, Worst lip sync choice ever. And this was where Plasma was really fucked, because how do you even lip sync to this? Like, Mhi'ya was able to make it slightly work and pulled out all the tricks to at least make it interesting. But unfortunately, Plasma was not able to do that, and we have to say goodbye to her. There was so much outcry over this, with people wanting Ru to save Plasma despite her very clearly winning the lip sync, and send home Mhi'ya because she hadn't been doing well. I'm sorry, Mhi'ya was literally in the top the week prior. Like, people love to cry out Riggory, but then get mad when the show doesn't rig things for them. Like, I love Plasma too. She was one of my favorites the entire season, but sending her home here was the right decision. Poor Morphine gets another low placement here, which I really don't think was deserved. This was one of those episodes with a very clear bottom two, and everyone else did pretty well. I feel like they could have just had 4 highs and a bottom 2 and call it a day. This episode was actually very controversial for its winner as well, with many people saying Q should not have won. This episode was definitely a 3-horse race between Q, Dawn, and Nymphia. I think all of them had pros and cons as to why they should win. Q's was stunning, it was very detailed, but it's a little less goth than everyone else's. But also, let's be real, none of these were goth. Like, none of these were goth. Dawn's was absolutely stunning close up, but from far away, because everything is the same color and it's all black, the silhouette gets completely lost. It looks very just like jumbled and weird. But close up, it's iconic. And then Nymphia's was also very stunning, but she was like extremely covered up and like probably could have revealed her face a little bit more, a little bit sooner. Overall, I think this choice just comes down to personal preference. Like, I was okay with Q winning, but low-key I would have been fine with any of the 3 winning, since I think they all did really well. So I'm not calling this rigged. I just think different people will have different preferences, and based on that, they'll have a different winner. But all 3 were stunning, deserving of a win. We're down to our final 7 now, and it's time for yet another remix. This time, they have to write verses encouraging people to vote in the upcoming election to the song Power. I kind of wish we got another comedy challenge for this political challenge, but I understand why they wanted to do something different this time. This is another challenge where, like, mostly everyone did a really great job. This cast is so strong, especially in these performance challenges. Now, this episode did get a lot of flack for not having a bottom 2, and I fully agree. There should have been, but, like, this was the Emmy bait episode, and I think they wanted this to be, like, an episode about positivity, not about competition. This also was controversial because of Plain Jane's decision to finally use her immunity potion on Nymphia. This was shocking to me because it really did not set this up well in the narrative, and I'm still not super sure why she decided to do this in the end. This episode is another not great one for Nymphia, with her annoyed at the fact that she has to write another verse explaining how Megami wrote the last one for her since this is not her strength. A lot of the queens are expecting her to not do well, and she badgers Plain to use her immunity potion on her. But it seems from the confessionals and Plain's reactions that there's no way she's going to do this. So when Plain randomly decides to use it on Nymphia when she's asked, it's kind of surprising, especially because we learn soon after that Plain might have needed it herself. There was definitely a top half and a bottom half to this challenge. Sapphira, Morphine, and Mhi'ya was the top half. Plain, Q, Nymphia, and Dawn was the bottom half. The top 2 was absolutely correct. This was an amazing episode for Morphine, who had one of my favorite verses in recent memory and absolutely lit up on that stage. After a few episodes in the bottom, this was a much needed redemption for her, but this was just Sapphira's episode from the jump. She did the best overall in the challenge. She annihilated the lip sync, even to a fucking Meghan Trainor song. She slayed the runway. This was absolutely the correct winner of this challenge. There were no bottoms, but Q and Plain definitely got bottom critiques. We don't know what the judges thought of Nymphia, but Michelle told her on the pit stop that she didn't need to use the immunity potion, and the judges basically told Dawn that you can't dance well, but it's endearing, so good job. We'll get deeper into this episode on the unrigging video, where I do have an elimination. But for now, we can move on to the PowerPoint presentation episode, which I absolutely gagged at. I love this challenge. I would love for them to bring this back, give the queens like full reign to do a presentation on whatever they want. I feel like that would be so funny. But the major storyline for this episode is Q and Plane coming together as friends after being rivals earlier in the season. But like, this felt kind of misguided because their like short little squabble kind of went nowhere earlier. Whereas like just one day prior, Dawn and Plane got into like a little tiff. So like, I don't know. The storyline just felt super forced, kind of out of nowhere. But it did bring us the Mama, kudos for saying that, for spilling, which is probably the biggest meme of the season. I think that's why this episode was controversial to fans, because Plane and Q are set up for this like huge storyline and prove they actually can work together. They slay the challenge. Q comes out as HIV positive. It's this huge moment. She wears a Keith Haring runway look to like bring it all together. And then they're only safe, and the win goes to Sapphira. I mean, this episode is hard. On one hand, I do think Sapphira did the best presenting and has the most natural charisma. So much so that, like, when she stumbles over her words, which is usually a death sentence on Drag Race, she's able to immediately recover, and, like, no one even cares. But the challenge isn't about who's the most charismatic. It's about who can create and present the best PowerPoint with their team. And I feel like that was Plane and Q who did that, to be completely honest. There was little to no chemistry on Sapphira's team. Her, Morphine, and Nymphia were all kind of just doing their own thing, just like passing off different topics to each other. Whereas Q and Plane played off of each other so well and had such great chemistry. And I feel like that was like the heart of this challenge. I do think the win should have went to them, but Sapphira slayed, so I don't want it to sound like I'm tearing her down at all. It's like I get what they were going for. I just saw this challenge differently and prioritize aspects of it that I guess the judges didn't. But an unexpected surprise this episode was Nymphia, who usually is kind of like middling to bad in comedy challenges, but was able to do a character that worked super well and was super fun to watch, no matter what the judges say. Then we have Morphine, Mhi'ya, and Dawn, who all struggle in different ways. Poor Dawn is put on a team with Mhi'ya, who is little to no help, and it kind of seems like Dawn just does all the work herself in like putting together their presentation. But even on the stage, her and Mhi'ya just have zero chemistry, and Dawn just kind of seems super stressed the whole time, trying to keep the train from going off the rails. The part where Dawn like starts the presentation on her own was great, and a good idea from her to like show the judges that she's great on her own, but just might not have been able to do the work of two when Mhi'ya is like dragging her down in the challenge. This is unfortunately Mhi'ya's swan song, but I do think she did have a fantastic arc throughout the season, with her over time being able to show lots of personality and wit in the workroom as she got closer to the girls. I feel like we know exactly who Mhi'ya is now, and I'm glad we got so much time with her, as she was able to turn some great looks, give us some of the best lip syncs of the season, and show that she's more than just a bad Cher impersonation. I think it was fair for Dawn to be saved from the bottom two here. I mean, usually I would say this could just be judged in teams, but she really was on a sinking ship and was still able to deliver some great jokes, whereas Morphine had one of the cringiest moments of the challenge when she does the whole, drag queen flopping bit, which was just like so unnecessary and so cringe. And yeah, it was not great. So because Morphine and Mhi'ya are in the bottom, we get the very highly anticipated Miami versus Miami lip sync. They were established as, Miami rivals early on, and so to see them finally go up against each other was super fun. And as one lip sync assassin falls, another rises, as this is where Morphine really gets her flowers, being able to take Mhi'ya down in a lip sync, even as she's being sabotaged against her throwing her titty at Mhi'ya and both of them like throwing shit at each other. It was crazy, but it was so funny. It was so fun. But Morphine does win the lip sync to the iconic Dim All of the Lights by Donna Summer, which, love her. Love this song. But that means that we are finally down to our final six, and given one of the most batshit challenges in Drag Race history, but one that I adored, it is the bathroom design challenge. I'm sorry, but bathroom hunties is insane. That's crazy. But once again, the queens are divided up by RuPaul, which, like, I just wish they could choose their own partners. Like, putting the two biggest competitors at this point together on a team just kind of seems unfair. Like, of course Sapphira and Plane are going to slay. Like, how could they not? This episode, though, it might be my favorite of the season. We see so many funny workroom shenanigans, from Dawn trying to steer the ship again, yet being stuck with someone else who's literally no help whatsoever in Nymphia. Poor Dawn. First she had Mhi'ya, who was just crickets during the idea process, and now she has Nymphia, who won't stop making farting noises. She's really been getting the short end of the stick at this point in the competition. I also love the scenes where they're, like, getting together their bathrooms, from Nymphia and Sapphira joking about Plane's white privilege since she's never had to move furniture in her life, to, like, the paint war. Like, this cast is just so fun. They had great chemistry, and that's what made the season what it was. When it comes time for the actual challenge, Q and Morphine make a hell-themed bathroom that has, like, so many funny gags, like the shattered mirror that Q points out was shattered because Mhi'ya looked into it. There's the spiked toilets, the toilet paper being at the top of the ceiling, a chained up pit crew member that they tickle with a feather. Like, it was crazy, but I thought it was really fun. And while Q did an okay job at hosting, Morphine yet again struggled with the comedy and being able to just improv. Then we have Nymphia and Dawn, who do a fine art museum themed bathroom, and I know a lot of people liked this concept, but, like, for me, this was the weakest bathroom. And I also thought the presentation was my least favorite, because you have Nymphia talking a mile a minute about nothing, and Dawn is, like, barely able to get a word in. This was a huge flop for me personally. And then lastly is Sapphira and Plane, who do a speakeasy with a musical performance. There's hidden booze everywhere. This is definitely the best hosting of all the teams, which was a no-brainer. And their win also is a no-brainer. This was a big episode for Plane, who really starts to buckle under the pressure, feeling scared being partnered with Sapphira since she doesn't really want to be overshadowed. And a lot of her inner demons start to come out. And there's a very touching moment in the workroom where she breaks down and Sapphira and her sisters kind of help her through it. And, you know, Plane has gotten a fantastic edit this season. We peel back more and more layers as the season goes on and learn so much about her. And one of the reasons why she avoided, hate online despite starting off the season as a villain. She didn't have this one-dimensional edit like most villains do. Hers was definitely very fleshed out. Also, the white privilege. This is another episode I think Nymphia was low-key saved from the bottom. Sorry, Nymphia fans. I don't think Morphine and Q ate, but they overall, I think, did a better job than Nymphia and Dawn. Plus, Nymphia not letting Dawn speak is what led to Dawn being in the bottom. So, like, as a team, they did not work well together. And so, like, I feel like they should go down as a team. But also, Morphine and Body, I'm not mad at it. It's so strange to me how they'll save Nymphia in moments like this and in Snatch Game, but also they, like, don't give her wins in the makeover or the goth design challenges where, like, she was definitely a viable option to win. But then they also, like, don't give her a good edit. So it's like, did they like her? Did they not like her? I'm not sure. Nymphia has one of the wildest journeys of any winner ever, and I have so much more to talk about with that, but I'll save it for my Nymphia Wind video coming very soon. We get the lip sync of the season until Morphine comes back with an even better one later, between Morphine and Dawn to Body by Megan Thee Stallion. And poor Dawn was just DOA, and she knew it, and this was time for Morphine to just do what she does best. One of the best solo performances in a lip sync ever, and one of the most one-sided lip syncs ever. This is absolutely a highlight for Morphine and cemented her lip sync assassin status on the season. We say goodbye to Dawn, who I feel like was just going to make a bigger splash, but spent most of the season just safe and, being shady in the confessional, which was fun. It was really fun, but I was just surprised she didn't bring as much to the competition aspect of the show. And that brings us to our top 5 episode, The Makeover, aka the most rigged challenge on Drag Race. Now, I remember I didn't watch this episode live, but I saw on my Instagram that people were, like, freaking out. This is the most rigged episode of the entire season. People were fuming. And then I watched it and I agreed with everything that happened. So to break it down, they have to make over dancers from Drag Race Live, and I loved this. I mean, these are all like ripped, hairy, hot men, and turning them into drag queens overnight was definitely going to be a challenge. People think Q or Nymphia should have won this challenge over Plain Jane, and I definitely see the arguments there, but I feel like people forget the makeover is about more than just what outfits you put them in. Plain was able to make a really great bond with her partner. She had the best dance moves during the dance segment, and she made him look like Afi Kendall. So, like, those are all great things in my book. Q and Nymphia also both did great jobs with their makeovers, but I feel like there wasn't much connection going on, and to RuPaul and the judges, that's one of the biggest factors of this challenge. So I definitely think Nymphia could have won this challenge. Like, if she would have won, I would have been like, yeah, makes sense. Looks good to me. I also think she nailed all the aspects of this challenge, but I also think Plain did, and I don't think it was rigged that Plain won. I think this is a season where there's a lot of episodes where there are multiple people who like could win, and I would be completely fine with that. And this is just another one of those. And then the bottom two was so clearly Sapphira and Morphine. This episode heavily focused on Sapphira stumbling for the first time all season. She went in with this expectation of what she was going to do with this insane geode dress, and then like that didn't work, and she was not able to course correct in time to bring it all together. Seeing this moment of vulnerability is always a good moment for someone who's been like eating up the entire season, because it shows that she doesn't buckle under the pressure of being in a bottom two lip sync. And while Morphine, I think, ate that lip sync, I do think Sapphira won. And like, this was Morphine's like fourth lip sync. Like, it was definitely her time to go. That leaves us with our top four of Nymphia, Q, Plain, and Sapphira. And instead of giving us a top four, we have to cut it down to a top three. We get a super last minute branding challenge, which I kind of enjoyed. I think it gives them one last chance to let us in, show us who they are. And at this point, everyone left should have a solid brand that they're able to bring to life. This was the Nymphia episode of the season. So much of the season, she was either barely in the episode or only in it when other queens talk about how annoying she's being, or when she's complaining about not wanting to do a challenge. And this episode made her so much more multi-dimensional. It showed us so much of who she was under all of the worry and the drag, and was a slam dunk win for Miss Nymphia. This was so needed, as she hadn't won anything since the 5th episode, and she needed a push right before the finale to kind of show us a bit more of who she is, so it's easier to root for her. This was absolutely perfect timing for her, and I think without this episode, I don't think she wins the season. Sapphira also, I think, annihilates this episode. She has such great chemistry with RuPaul and is able to show herself so freely and so easily, bare her soul, and just show us who she is down to her core. There's definitely an argument to be made that Sapphira could have won this episode, especially with her runway, but unfortunately, I don't think Sapphira brought anything we haven't seen before. We knew that she was charismatic and lovely and confident in all of the things that she showed. Nymphia bared a whole new layer of herself, which I think really is what this challenge is asking for. That leaves a bottom two of Q and Plain, which made total sense. These two definitely have weaker brands, and I think that's even kind of Plain's undoing in the finale. Q was so damn close to the finale, and I think she kind of did herself in with some of her behavior on the season. They've done 1,000 double saves right before the final episode. There's no reason they couldn't also do one here. I think, unfortunately, Q being a bit bitter at points during the season when she felt like she deserved a win that she didn't get, I think that rubbed production the wrong way, and I think it kind of took her out of contention for the win. I mean, the way the edit dunked on her so hard at so many points, Q got kind of a more villainous edit than Plain did in the end, and Plain was actually telling people they were ugly and talentless to their faces. I also think I loved Q, and I thought that she added so much tension and fun to the season, but I mean, I think we all knew that she was not winning with the edit that she got, and I think actually Q did super well in that final lip sync. definitely her best lip sync of the season, and I think it was warranting of a double save. But even that was not enough to bring her to the finale. So we end up with one of the most evenly matched top threes in history. Two of the queens have 4 wins and one with 3 wins, and a total of 2 bottom 2 placements amongst them. I mean, this is a very, very strong group of 3 queens, and I think that's why Q was cut. I mean, these 3 were so clearly the 3 best on the season, so why not just bring those 3 to the finale? The top rated episode of Drag Race ever is next, which is where the eliminated queens participate in a lip sync smackdown for 50K. And I mean, this episode was just perfection. Amazing reveals, amazing songs, amazing costumes, amazing energy. Mhi'ya being edited as this evil that needed to be defeated by Megami was insane. I don't think we need to dive into the episode super heavily. I think everything was pretty fair, and this script is already at 20 pages long, and my voice is going to die at any given moment now. But I do want to talk about that final lip sync between Megami and Morphine. That was the lip sync of the season. 2 completely different approaches to the song that both worked perfectly. It was like they were trading off who was slaying too. Like, Megami started strong, then Morphine came in, then Megami was eating, then Morphine finished strong. Like, if this was on the regular part of a season, this 100% would have been a double Shantae. Like, I think depending on your taste and lip sync style determines who you think won. Kayla and I love that stupid New York humor style of lip sync, so we both think that Megami won. But if you like the splits and the dips and the Danciana diva style, you probably think that Morphine won. In all seriousness, Megami didn't need to win this lip sync to win the episode, if that makes sense. Like, she got her redemption just by proving everybody wrong. The queens in the room, the audience, they all wrote her off. But she came in and slayed 4 lip syncs in a row, more than any other queen in the episode, and absolutely got her redemption. And that just makes my heart so happy. Everyone raising money for her on social media also was so lovely. She deserves it. Iconic. Morphine needed to win this episode to finish her storyline. She was constantly talking about how she didn't win a single thing. No maxi challenges, no mini challenges, no money. So to get her redemption, she needed the W, and the W she got. This is my new, feel-good episode of Drag Race. I'm gonna watch this 50 times before the year ends. I love this cast so much. Seeing them all back was the best, and low-key, I forgot about even wanting a reunion. I hope they do this every year now. I think it's much less rigged than when you do the LaLaPaRuZa on the season, and I think this just works much better. Now, for the grand finale. I won't lie in saying I wasn't a little bit disappointed that Sapphira didn't win. She was my winner pick from the promo, and I fell in love with her more and more as the season went on. But I would also be remiss in saying that Nymphia annihilated that final lip sync and won fair and square. Poor Plain was kind of not in the conversation about who was going to win. I feel like we all knew which 2 it would come down to, and Plain's out of left field finale performance kind of sealed the deal there. I thought she was going to do something akin to Burger Finger, something showing off her bimbo, stupid, silly persona. But instead, we got a pretty by-the-numbers dance performance about the bodysuits that she wore, which felt like a tiny, detail from the season itself, so it was a little bit odd. Both Nymphia and Sapphira slayed their final performances, with Sapphira's being my personal favorite, and were rightly the top 2 of the season. When it came to the final lip sync, I don't know if Sapphira just didn't think it would matter, or something fell through last minute, but her Padam Padam performance just felt jumbled, the vampire teeth having no real reason to be there. It didn't go, I thought there was going to be more, vampire moments. Nope, that was it. She took off her outfit 2 lines before the take off all my clothes lyric in the song, which I was okay. It was kind of all over the place, and not the well thought out, polished performance we've come to expect from Sapphira. Meanwhile, Nymphia comes out as a boba drink unleashes boa balloons into the air, cartwheels off her costume, splits and dips and headstands her way across the stage. It's a huge spectacle, and the first time all season that someone has outshined Sapphira. I said on the pod that Sapphira was coming in with a disadvantage since we've seen her lip sync so much, and Nymphia was coming in with a huge advantage since we haven't seen her lip sync. And I think that most definitely came into play here. I really do think the editors did Nymphia dirty this season. I mean, they knew way ahead of time who the top two was going to be. It's not like they just filmed this finale like they usually do. So to give one of them basically no storyline for most of the season, outside of them annoying the cast, only to then try and give them a last-second redemption arc one episode before the reunion, is crazy. While I think Nymphia was saved from the bottom a few times, there are also some wins that arguably could have been hers as well. So I guess her track record does kind of even itself out in that way. My take is, after Sasha Colby last season, they didn't want there to be another obvious winner that everyone guessed from the jump with Sapphira. And with Nymphia pulling in crazy numbers in the online polls, it just makes sense that she would win. And it's not like she didn't earn it in that final lip sync either. Overall, this was definitely a fairer season than most Drag Race seasons. There are still some moments of riggory that will shake the season up, and we'll get into that next week with my unrigging video. But this is a top 5 season for sure for me personally. I'm going to miss this cast and the fun they brought on social media and just the overall vibe of the fandom during this season, as we could all agree on something finally, which was that this season devoured. There are plenty of queens who are going to be huge stars, probably come back multiple times, tour the world, get the brand deals, and I'm very excited for the future of this cast. I think it is very bright. But let me know what you think. Am I way off base with my claims of riggory or not riggory? Let me know where I was right and where I was wrong, respectfully, in the comments. And next week we'll be talking about how things would have went if it was unrigged. And honestly, my voice hurts. I feel like I'm dying, and you all know where you can follow me and all of the things that I ramble about at the end of a video. So why don't we just end it here? Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.